All right, man, peace. So, brother, this is going to be the latest entry into the series Woke Wars. And this edition is going to be featuring Mr. Kyrie Irving, the borderline superstar combo guard currently of the Brooklyn Nets, formerly of the Boston Celtics and Cleveland Cavaliers, and Mr. Kendrick Perkins, the currently embattled sports analyst who always seems to go above and beyond to provoke as many people as possible because he's desperately in need of attention. But you have to be very careful because sometimes what we seek after is what ends up destroying us. So now what we're going to find over the course of this segment and over the course of this overall narrative pertaining to the NBA is that, like most overarching storylines, we have to search for the revelations. What are we learning about people based on them being put in highly pressurized situations? Because that's when the truth comes out. You're always going to have a figure like a Kyrie Irving who's going to say things that are going to be like a pinprick on someone. It's going to get a reaction. It's going to get a response. It's going to allow us to learn about ourselves and other people. There are two different levels of comprehension. There's the superliminal, or the exterior, and there's the subliminal, or the interior. What is it that we understand based on our level of comprehension? What can we learn? How can we get better? This is how we get better. We get better by paying as close a level of attention or an amount of attention as possible to any and all components of a situation. That's all we can do. None of us are perfect. What we're learning from this is that, once again, many so-called black men still do not have a ruling class mentality. At least Kyrie Irving seems to be trying to get there. Now, he's a Luciferian, he's a Hermeticist, as most top-level NBA players are. But as I always tell you, brothers, just because they're into that arcane, esoteric shit does not mean that they're all in agreement and that they're all in lockstep. LeBron James is a very high-level witch and a Luciferian as well. But he and Kyrie Irving are diametrically opposed when it comes to what to do about this George Floyd issue. And I'll be covering that in other videos as well. But let's get to the point of this video right here, that being Kendrick Perkins' decision to try to diminish or marginalize Kyrie Irving's intelligence in front of the public, which is a common technique that woke liberal Negroes will try to utilize against so-called black men who go against the grain or who go against the wave. Because the wave is always going to be supplied by the Svengali, by the guru, by the head, by the overseer of the liberal Negro, that being the liberal Caucasian. And behind the liberal Caucasian is the liberal Caucasian Jew. If you understand and remember that hierarchy, you will always grasp where everything comes from. As one of the quote-unquote alleged co-founders of Black Lives Matter recently acknowledged, they're trained Marxists. So we have to ask ourselves some questions. Not only should we finally understand what the Black Lesbians Matter movement is about, but notice that alleged co-founder Patrisse Cullors, she didn't state we adhere to Marxism. She said we're trained Marxists. So the question that begs to be asked is, who the hell trained them? Was it so-called black people or was it so-called white people? And that's when we finally start to ascertain and peel back the layers as to the true conspiracy of what oftentimes overruns the so-called black community, that being false narratives that make us think that we're engaging in a quote-unquote revolt or a protest or some type of movement, when in reality it's controlled to guide us towards a solution that is already pre-canned. Kyrie Irving is acting as that quote-unquote bug in the machine. He's a problem that has to be removed. And do not be surprised to see the NBA try to force Kyrie Irving out of the league in the next couple of seasons. Because he might become, at least that's going to be the perception that is propagated to the masses, more trouble than he's worth. He's going to be considered someone who is a malcontent and things of that nature. They're definitely going to try to demonize him if they can. But he is in the right place, that being Brooklyn. Because if there's anywhere that you can go and say whatever the fuck you want to say, it's Brooklyn, New York, because they just say any damn thing out there. Brooklyn has been taken over by the Caucasian hippies. So we'll see what happens with Kyrie, but he's becoming a bigger problem than I think even he understands. And the powers that be may want to see him removed. So anyway, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
Welcome Welcome back to TMZ Sports. Michael J. Babcock with Robert Littell. Robert L. Littell. L. Littell. I was going to see if you were going to forget again. I'm screwing up, man. I was getting it. I was right, and then I'm screwing up all left and right here. Let's talk about Kyrie Irving. The Brooklyn Nets star has been very vocal about not wanting to go to Florida, to Orlando, and resume the rest of the season. Obviously, a lot going on in the country. Still fighting COVID-19.
Allegedly still quote-unquote fighting COVID-19. Once again, brothers, it's a real virus, but the storyline is so overhyped and overblown. It's very clear that there's some type of esoteric significance, that being that the coronavirus represents the power of the quote-unquote sun god, also known as the bull god Baal. But I'll be covering that in a whole other series.
Many social justice issues, police brutality, marches across the country. A lot going on right now, and Kyrie thinks it is far too important of a time to go play basketball.
And he's saying that at the behest of Stephen Jackson, who's acting as his proverbial handler. Stephen Jackson, who was Gemini programmed with George Floyd.
NBA player Kendrick Perkins, Celtics, Thunder, had a really nice career. Absolutely.
Big country, goofy Negro Kendrick Perkins.
Blasted Kyrie. He went on ESPN's Get Up this week and absolutely unloaded on the Brooklyn Nets star. Watch this.
You take Kyrie Irving's brain and put it in a bird right now. Guess what that bird is going to do? It's going to fly back. I'm okay.
Well, what would happen if we took your brain and put it inside of a bird? What would it do, Kendrick Perkins? In what direction would it fly, or would it just fall to the ground?
You changing your mind and having a different way of thinking and saying, you know what, we need to make a stance, and sit out. But what is the plan after that? He didn't have one.
Well, I agree with you on that. If your stance or your perspective, your belief is that Kyrie Irving should have a step 2 or phase 2 to sitting out the rest of the season, you can say that. But overall, his view is that he wants all the energy to be concentrated and focused on George Floyd, which Stephen Jackson himself has stated. And that's why I keep saying it's a wonder to me that no one is linking up Kyrie Irving's statements to Stephen Jackson, unless it's been told to these pundits and these analysts behind the scenes and behind the curtain that Stephen Jackson is someone that is not to be addressed or touched because he's a part of an overall scripted narrative that they want to have developed in some other chapter, in some other way. But the code red has been declared on Kyrie Irving, at least for right now.
Again, that showed his lack of leadership. So Kyrie Irving, right now, you are the distraction.
Well, is Kyrie Irving necessarily a bad leader just because he did not have a next step to no longer playing for the rest of the season? Or is he someone who, as he stated, is representing a certain portion of the NBA who feels like they're not represented, they're not spoken for, because you have someone like a LeBron James who thinks that the NBA is just his show. And no matter what, he wants to come back to play so that he can get a 4th quote-unquote championship in that mind-controlled programming center known as Disney World, inside of the quote-unquote bubble, with the ring that's going to follow players around and also be able to ascertain their health status. I'm not quite sure why anyone would agree to that level of scrutiny just to play some basketball games, especially with athletes who are, at the fittest level of their life and are never going to be healthier than they are right now. I can see the athletes getting tested throughout their stay in the quote-unquote bubble and then being tested before they leave. But to have rings on that are going to track their health status, that just makes no sense to me unless they're being used as guinea pigs for something that's going to be pushed on society down the line.
You are the distractor. You distracting the whole situation. So it's crazy to me.
Distracting from what? From LeBron James winning another championship?
0 cents, and I totally disagree with Kyrie Irving.
A couple of things with that.
Well, you can see the so-called black woman here on the left-hand side, Malika Andrews. Just the look on her face, she's disturbed because of the tact that Kendrick Perkins decided to take in addressing Kyrie Irving. Understand that it was not necessary for him to try to make things personal, talking about the brother's brains, especially in light of the overall situation that is transpiring in America regarding race. But Kendrick Perkins, that's why I stated, if a bird had your brains, in which direction would it fly? At least if it had Kyrie Irving's brains, it would fly backwards. In which direction would a bird fly if it had your brains, Kendrick Perkins? Because I promise you, if we were to check Kendrick Perkins' academic history and compare it to Kyrie Irving's, most likely there would be no comparison. I'd be willing to bet money on that.
I don't like him disrespecting Kyrie Irving's intelligence. Like, I don't think we should do that. You know, you got two black men. Don't say the whole bird. I know you're trying to be provocative television and stuff, but the whole, if you put his brain in a bird, let's just stick to the topic at hand. If you disagree, you disagree.
Well, that's been Kendrick's MO since he's been on TV, is use as many shock tactics as possible to get attention for himself.
People that do disagree with Kyrie Irving, but I think, you know, he could reach out to Kyrie Irving, you know, find out what the plan is. We don't know if Kyrie has a plan or not.
It's always amazing to me when you see these cats on TV, like Kyrie, who's considered a small man in the NBA, and they show them walking down the street, and they're like 3 inches taller than everybody out in the street. I remember seeing B.J. Armstrong in the street one time in Midtown Manhattan. And for those of us who grew up back in the 90s, B.J. Armstrong looked like a midget out there on the basketball floor. But out there in the street, I think like it was around 50th Street or 51st Street, he was at least 2 or 3 inches taller than everybody walking past him.
Have a plan, because the only thing that we get are little snippets of what he said. Maybe he does have a plan, you know, for all we know. I don't think it's sometimes when people put this ain't that T.O. was talking about. Yeah. When you push back a little bit, you get labeled like certain things. And I think Kyrie has some good points, you know, but
kudos to Kyrie Irving for not trying to go back and forth with Perkins about this and taking the high road.
Pushback, you know, for someone that is going against the NBA is a little stronger than what it really needs to be.
Yeah, it seemed personal almost. It seems like Kendrick and Kyrie, maybe they're not fans of one another.
Well, keep in mind, I believe that Kendrick Perkins was on the Cleveland Cavaliers squad back in 2016, 2017, and Kyrie's last year there, where supposedly, according to various sources, Kyrie went through certain stretches over the course of that season where he did not speak to his teammates. And we know that Kendrick was only brought onto the Cleveland Cavaliers as a favor given to him, bestowed upon him by LeBron James. So we know that LeBron and Kyrie have had some issues. So via proxy, that means that Kendrick Perkins does not like Kyrie. Kendrick Perkins is like the most dangerous type of dude. You know, you run across these dudes that lead with their emotions, and you never know how things can go left when you come across these emotional ass niggas. I don't like you because my homeboy don't like you, so now we got beef. Like those type of dudes. Some of these so-called black men are dead or in prison because of emotional ass niggas who don't know how to just say, you know what, let's discuss our differences empirically, rationally, logically, and maybe you have your perspective, I have mine. But someone like this, he's just, you know, he's trying to be relevant in a different way because he knows he'll never be relevant as a basketball player.
Unusually harsh, because you've got to imagine, even if you disagree with Kyrie, that his heart at least is in the right place here. But I don't know if he has a well thought out plan or not. We haven't.
No, Kyrie does not have a well thought out plan. But how do you have a well thought out plan when the sentiment is to form your own league? First, you have to take the temperature of the room and understand the minds of the people that you're dealing with. And the vast majority of these NBA niggas, they're going to take the money over autonomy and over rulership because they do not have a ruling class mentality. That's my point. That's why I state I make videos for a certain level of brother. I don't make videos for everybody. You understand that? And that's the thing. We have to focus on a certain demographic. For example, the Bible is not written for everybody. Anybody can read it. But if you have an understanding of what you're reading, the scriptures are exclusive, and they've always been exclusive. The Most High only made a covenant with the nation of Israel. Even in the second covenant, it's only for the elect of the nation of Israel. It's more and more exclusive as you read on. When you read the scriptures, Christ had 70 disciples, but then he had 12 core disciples. And amongst those 12 core disciples, there were 3 that he took aside. And of those 3, there was 1 that was his favorite. So whenever you have something dealing with the level of truth, it becomes more and more exclusive. My channel is a pro-truth channel geared towards the so-called black man. Anybody can listen, but my channel is geared towards that demographic. And it's the same thing with any other level of truth. Whenever you try to disperse it, the vast majority of people are going to be offended by it because they can't think at a certain level. The vast majority of our people cannot think on the level of rulership because it's been embedded in their DNA that they need the so-called white man. That's just how people have been trained.
Really got into it, but right, to assume he doesn't have a plan and to assume that his motives are bad here, I think is probably unfair.
Well, I'm pretty sure the brother does not have a real plan. But I think that he put that out there of forming their own league so that maybe we could start talking about it. Ice Cube supposedly just did it. How come NBA players who are making $35, $40 million a year can't do it? The only reason would be is that cats do not want to sacrifice.
I also appreciate that when you're going on TV and you're trying to be entertaining
and on top of that, do not believe in themselves or each other.
You know, in general, I think that Kendrick is a really entertaining dude.
Yeah, he is. He's very entertaining. He's like a clown prince, the clown prince of basketball analysis.
It's a little strange. I'm very interested to see whether Kyrie is going to respond here.
Kudos to Kyrie for not responding, at least thus far.
Back, whether he does unveil some sort of plan for the future going forward. But yeah, I'm with you. A little strange, Robert.
Nothing really strange about it. It's something that's predictable. Kendrick Perkins has gone out of his way to be very disrespectful to anyone who he perceives to be a threat to LeBron James.
Right now, you are the distraction.
Right now, you are the distraction. It's the same guy on TV crying and bitching because of his white neighbors. Brothers, there are so many affluent black communities all over America. If you want to live around your own people, you can do so. And it can be based on how much money you're making. So Kendrick Perkins is full of shit. Kevin Durant already called him out, but from what I saw, Kendrick had to come back at KD and call him a cupcake. So, I mean, it is what it is. You'll just be going back and forth with these goofy niggas all day if you pay them attention. But just getting back to the point of the video, Kyrie Irving, hopefully you learned something from this situation. When you start to think at a three-dimensional level, you better be careful who you speak to on a three-dimensional level. Because most of these niggas are house niggas and don't even know it. As soon as they heard him speak about forming your own league, they ran around and started talking about it. Oh, listen to what Kyrie said. Why would you do that for if you're really so-called pro-black? Most of these guys think honestly like their mothers. But anyway, peace.